Water is one of the most precious resources we have, and yet every day it is under attack. And it's put at risk by large corporations who leak chemicals into our rivers and streams, the fossil fuel, chemical, and pharmaceutical industries, and by the often cozy relationship between regulators and the companies that they're supposed to be watching. And of course, driving it all home for many of us, this week marks the 4th anniversary of the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. And it appears that lessons from that disaster still have not been learned. So what do communities do when elected officials and big companies are just focused on damage control rather than addressing the problem before it's too late? Joining us now to discuss is actor and founder of Water Defense, Mark Ruffalo, and Chief Scientist at Water Defense, Scott Smith. So gentlemen, thank you both for being here. Mark, it's a pleasure to have you back. You were on just the other month, maybe 2 months ago, and we were talking about this.
Same issue.
I mean, yeah, same issue, but the problem hasn't gone away.
No.
Right? So remind us one more time why it is that water is something that we really just learn to take advantage of without realizing how much at risk it is.
Well, we turn on the tap and it comes so easily into our homes, and you know, we hear about things like the Clean Water Act, and we assume that the EPA and our regulators and all these people are keeping an eye on it. And the fact of the matter is more and more there's been a chiseling away of how much resources are available to regulators, to regulations, and so we're seeing more and more contamination happening. And we're doing more and more risky things. We're carrying different kinds of oil, Bakken shale, through train cars and pipes that were never meant to carry that kind of explosive material. And so there's been a sort of an attack on the safety net that's supposed to protect our water, and we're getting more and more kind of reckless with our waterways.
It's amazing too to hear that we're being more reckless with something like this, Scott, because we all need the water, right? It affects all of us. So why would it be that regulators, that politicians, that the people that run these companies wouldn't care?
Well, it's almost so simple, it's mind-boggling. And to diagnose a problem first, then you can solve it, and that's what we're here to do. And the waterways are all connected. For example, you know, the Missouri River connects to the Mississippi, the Gulf, and the Gulf Stream right up this way to New York and Cape Cod. So it's a matter of 7 to 10 days when anything spills, whether it's West Virginia or any other place, it's just a matter of time before that contaminant just drift down to the Gulf of Mexico and up here. And we're all connected by water. It's that simple. And we're here to bring people together, diagnose the problem, then solve it.
So what is it that brought the two of you together? You both met at the Gowanus Canal, right? Which also is connected to the Hudson River and the East River. Talk about it all flowing together.
Well, we were, you know, Water Defense was looking for some kind of testing method that was really thorough and subtle and could give us a really clear picture of what was in our water. And we felt that unless you can really understand what's in the water, you know, and see what the problem is, you can't really solve that problem. And so water testing was something that was really interesting to us, and we felt that it was a very important priority. The water testing methods now are very antiquated. They're about as old as a rotary phone. And we're living in an iPhone era. And so we heard about this gentleman when he was in Mayflower, Arkansas, and that oil spill there. And it was a big Exxon oil spill. And we started to look into him. We were tweeting with him. We were all, both Water Defense, myself, and Water Citizen were all engaging with the Exxon saying, hey, you're saying there's no oil in this lake, but this gentleman is finding it and saying it's there. And so we reached out and we kind of started a relationship over social media that has developed into Scott donating his water technology, this testing technology, to Water Defense. And Scott was brought on as our chief scientist. And we went to Gowanus Canal.
Twitter, bringing people together every day.
Amazing.
So Scott, we were just showing some video there while Mark was speaking that involved this green octopus-looking like contraption that we have on the table in front of us. So explain what it is that this is, how it is that you test the water.
Well, it's actually quite simple. the water column is defined as what is beneath the surface and above the bottom. So if you're a fish or you're a kid, you're in that water column. That's where life is. And what I first witnessed in the BP spill 4 years ago was samples being taken for a split second from the surface. And this is what the material looks like before. And this is what the water defense indicator in the whole water column. This is 3 ounces of Bakken crude oil that I pumped myself out of the wells in the Bakken shale, and it cleared the water.
So that much oil was in here when it started.
And if you're truly going to know what exposure is over time in the water, you don't want to take it for a split second. The fish doesn't live in the water for a split second. No one's in the water for a split second. You don't bathe for a split second.
So why is it, that makes perfect sense to me, right? Why would you just skim it right off the top? That seems ridiculous, and yet that's what they're doing. Why?
There's another thing here. I'm told, yesterday was the 4-year anniversary. It was actually, holidays and Easter, and I received a lot of very emotional calls saying not to give up. And I want to say about John Pratt and Mark, I'm very passionate, and I get sometimes very angry, and for those of us, and Mark has become my anger management. Because I get so angry about this, but I'm passionate. He's, keeps my anger under control, so he's a good therapist. But I think the elected officials in the communities, I hear a lot about tourists, and we don't want to sell out our next generation. The point is that we want to bring people together. Let the science transparently speak. Everyone's connected by water. We can agree on that. So all sides, everybody needs to come together. If we know what's in our water, we can solve the problem. And this ties to the healthcare crisis in this country too. And
the oil spill, the Deepwater Horizon rig that exploded, that's something that you also said is deeply personal for you. How
it's deeply, deeply personal because this is not my choice to be here, it's my obligation. I went down into the Gulf with an invention. It ended up being used and deployed to remove the oil from the water. And I worked with fishermen, I lived with fishermen, and I saw the pain and agony and struggle. And I saw these instantaneous water samples come out of the top and declare, I have kids and I have an obligation now to move forward with this. And that's where the water column and the early stage indicators, there's a picture of me standing on a buoy in Pensacola on buoy 13, Coast Guard jets circling, and that's where I started doing this water testing. And that led to Mayflower, where Mark and John found me.
So Mark, tomorrow you've got a blog coming out on the Huffington Post talking about the oil spill and talking about how it should have been a wake-up call to some of our officials. How many wake-up calls do you need?
I don't know. Eventually one day we're going to get it right and then everything will be ruined. But what we've seen in these 4 years is basically there's been no change to the way they interface with these disasters. There's been no change in the way they corral oil or take oil away. And you have these new emergent technologies that are completely pushed out of the market because it's outside of the kind of business as usual. And so, sadly, we're not seeing any kind of growth about the way we handle these spills today or the way we did 4 years ago.
And is that something particular about our culture? Do we happen to always just be reactionary? I mean, I wouldn't say that that's the case if you look at other areas that we prioritize. When it comes to the defense of our country, right? This is where we will take preemptive action. Why are we reactionary when it comes to the environment?
It's amazing. There were bills that were actually going to change the way, deep water drilling. They have not changed regulations on that. They're still using 1971 regulations. And after BP happened, they were going to bring in a whole nother set of regulations that were specifically designed for that. But the American Petroleum Association killed that. And it's not good for their business, but they got a tremendous amount of power in our political scene. And the oil lobby is incredibly powerful. It's well oiled, and so there is a culturally yes, but there is also some pretty heavy hitters that are trying to block us progressing on these fronts because it's more expensive to do it.
Yeah, I want to add a very important point. And we believe that most people want to do the right thing. There are great people at the EPA.
Yes.
We're doing work on Long Island. We want to help people do the right thing. And I believe the people at the top and even the lobbyists, they're just confused. It's all about education. For example, if President Obama, the Speaker of the House, if they would join me for a half an hour in one of these disasters, they would be so appalled there would be immediate action. In the day and age with technology, it's about human interaction is more important than ever in connecting with people. And we see that with the younger generation. That's why we're so optimistic on the future. Don't get us wrong, we're optimistic. It's about diagnosing the problem.
Well, and I'm happy that there's some optimism in this, right? Because otherwise, what's it all for? But it is a difficult path. And as you said, there's a lot of money interests that stand in the way, that are obstacles, but also you run into people in positions of power that just don't want to hear it. We have a clip that we want to play, Scott, from when you actually tried to bring, the attention to your testing methods to the governor in West Virginia.
Water Defense was going to donate testing. We'd already been there testing. We had test results. We were going to donate it to the civilians and the governor of West Virginia because we know that these tests are much more sensitive and can travel up and down the water column, so we could give them a much clearer picture.
You were going to donate it, they were going to get it for free, and yet this is what happened. Take a look.
Donate.
What are you going to donate?
We're going to donate the scientific testing so we can help identify what's in the water.
I think we've got that handled.
You do?
Yes.
Yeah, that's been identified. That's why we're just a little confused with your statement of saying that the governor's office requested you to be here. But this is not the place. We're responsible for ensuring the safety of the water.
We are running samples as we go, so we know.
Are those how are those samples being run in the water? Is there a way that we can look at that and review that?
I can't answer those questions.
She's not comfortable with it. You're going to have to leave.
Okay, I have to leave?
Yeah.
Okay. I want to say something.
Tell us what was going on there.
Those police officers that escorted me out, they got it. They felt badly. I spent time educating them in 10 minutes. So that's why I believe 99.9% of people want to do the right thing. It's about education. And for my friend Becky Neal there, she runs coal education days. I want to volunteer with her to do a water education day right in West Virginia.
Are you surprised that happened, Mark? Or is some of it just about the methods, the way that you try to approach it?
Yeah, that was a public hearing. That was an open public place to go.
I'm not
surprised.
At public hearings, right?
I'm not surprised. I've seen it before. But what we were running up against from the beginning, as we were trying to engage the West Virginia's governing, the whole body, was a lot of denial and obfuscation. Now, they had the test results, but they were refusing to give them to the public. And at the very moment they did release the water to say it was safe to drink, was the very moment when all the bad news was actually coming in. And shortly after that, the governor had to backtrack because kids were ending up in the hospital. And it's sad because I think people are afraid to be embarrassed, or they want to appear like they're in control. But these things are happening. These are new, and no one expects Governor Tomblin to have an understanding of these crazy chemicals that have never been tested on humans, or understand how they interact with humans or living animals, and so they get into a defensive position, and our feeling is listen, information doesn't hurt you. It actually gives you a tool to be able to really make moves that are well informed and that are beneficial to you.
It might hurt some other interests, right? And then that's why they try to keep some of it out of public view. I want to introduce now Massachusetts State Representative Brian Mannell, who represents part of Cape Cod. Hello, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Now, Representative Mannell, you attended an event with these two gentlemen here, and now you are all three working together. So tell us about some of the big issues that you're trying to tackle when it comes to Cape Cod and what's happening there.
Well, first, let me just say thank you for bringing attention to this issue. This is something that, as a policymaker, has been a passion for me and an issue here on Cape Cod for a long time. We have a sole source aquifer on Cape Cod, which is to say that we don't have any other source of water. We have one source of groundwater. And so we have a variety of different problems on the Cape in terms of trying to manage our population and our growth so that we can have a sustainable, long-term Cape Cod, the same beautiful place that we love. But the fact of the matter is that it's been a pressing issue for a long time because between 1970 and 2000, there was essentially a 90% growth in homes on the Cape. And as a result of that, there's been a huge amount of nitrogen that year after year goes into our water and is basically causing our environment to die off. So I've gotten invited a little while back. I get invited to different meetings of state rep, but I heard that the Hulk was going to be at Cape Cod Community College. And I went for Mark Ruffalo because I wanted to see him and I wanted to hear what he had to say. He was this guy. And I'd done a little research. I knew that he was interested in the issue and had campaigned against fracking and the wastewater from that. But I ended up going and then staying to listen to Scott Smith and what the gentleman from Water Defense had to say. And for the first time, I felt a lot of optimism about this and being uniquely positioned to help bring some attention to it up at the State House. I have brought them up. And we're trying to get some funding for Cape Cod Community College because we believe that the Cape Cod Community College can help play a role in terms of putting students out in the fields for real-world, research using this technology to get a better, more comprehensive assessment of the quality of our water. And
what about do you feel a sense of not only optimism but a sense of responsibility as well? Mark was just saying that you can't expect the governor to know everything, especially in areas where we haven't really seen the research and the testing to be done as to what the effects are from these chemicals. But, how about yourself?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of concern up at that level. As to Scott's point, I think the key is education. When I saw what these guys were doing, it was, sort of mind-blowing. It's basically like the sham wow for the environment with oil. You throw this stuff in and you can pull it out. But above and beyond that, we can create this new way of testing. And I think that that's important. Getting real, concrete information on what kind of pollutants and contaminants are in our water and getting it from the whole water column, not just, the instantaneous test, which is the way that we're doing. And I think that there are other policymakers who are on board with that. I know that Governor Patrick is, and certainly Speaker of the House, Robert Leo, has shown a lot of interest. And there's really it's just education more than anything. And I'm happy to help with that part.
What about, the technology, too? You're talking about testing the entire water column, but I want to go back to our lovely prop here that we have again, Scott. It just seems so simple, right? With all the advances in technology that we have today, and you said it really is painfully simple, but isn't there even something better that we can come up with?
If there is something better, I'll be the first to endorse it and adopt it and obsolete.
And me too.
After what I have seen in the Gulf of Mexico and technologies being blocked that should not be being blocked, I will be the first. I look myself in the mirror, and if there's something better than this technology, we'll adopt it at Water Defense.
And how much does, where you talked about costs, and excuse me, in order for a lot of these companies in the industry to make a change, they worry about rising costs then. This doesn't look all that expensive. It's like a bunch of pieces of foam.
This is so simple to say. It's based on, I designed it on biomimicry, human lungs, alveoli, surface area. So the cost of what you conventionally see out there is about $2 a square foot of surface area. This is 7 cents if you use it once, if you reuse it as a fraction. It's about maximizing contact with the water and pulling it out. And I want to make an important point to Brian Mantle on this is as technical as I'm going to get. So 4-methyl cyclohexane methanol is in West Virginia is a cousin to the dioxane problem, Brian, we have in Eastham. Just a couple oxygen molecules, they're close cousins. So my point is every community has issues, whether it be population density or anything else. In Mother Nature, sometimes to solve our greatest problems, we just need to simplify. The human lungs are pretty amazing that we have the surface area of a half a tennis court. So that's simply what I did and maximized the surface area, all the human lungs.
And I saw him and I said, this guy really knows what he's doing, and he's got a disruptive breakthrough technology, and he needs to be heard. And and we have a platform to introduce him to the world. And same thing with Brian. I mean, you know, my hope and what I see happening is people get it. And even people who, once they hear it, it makes sense to them, just like you. Well, I can't believe we're not doing this. Why aren't we not doing this? And you know, I think for a long time people were happy with the SNAP test because they're easily gamed. You know, a lot of people know that this stuff is on the bottom. You know, it's like putting your syrup in a clear glass. It goes right down the bottom. So I think for a long time that was okay for people. And now you're seeing that, you know, people like Brian, people like the Speaker DeLeo, they really understand it, and they're coming up against it, and it's costly to them. It's costly to these people to have to deal with water issues after the contamination. And so when we went to Cape Cod Community College, and the kids, what gives me hope is these kids, they get it. It makes immediate sense to them, and they want to engage. And they're the ones who give me hope, and people like Brian.
And they're the ones that are ultimately going to be affected
of course.
Down the line, right?
This is their world.
This generation, the next generations to come. And so, you know, your voices are out there. Other people in elected positions, they have the platform because they've been elected, and they should feel a responsibility. But what can other people do to help? I just want to bring up a comment from one of our viewers. Lane Brooks says, Mark, thanks for your leadership on bringing the problems with fracking to public discussion, another big issue that you discuss. What's your recommendation for how people can get directly involved?
Well, you know, I just think educating yourself is a big, powerful tool. And that opens you up to making decisions that are based on education and what you know. You know, I invite people to come and get involved with water defense. If you're in Massachusetts, you know, reach out to your representatives and help us take this program, develop protocols at a community college that these kids will go on into the world, and they'll take this with them, and get involved with us as we try to build this out. I mean, what we'd like to see happen ultimately is to create the first line of defense. The first line of defense is knowledge. And by knowing what's in our waterways, by deploying this throughout the United States, through other community colleges, we can start to create a national map that shows us what the water was before and what it was after. And we'll be able to pinpoint contamination almost to exactly where it happened. And until we do that, we're going to be always playing this cat and mouse game, this kind of shell game. It wasn't us. Who was it? You can't prove it was us. You know, and that's kind of that's the sort of business as usual that's going on right now. One guy says, you can't prove that as us that did that. Another guy says, but you don't have a water test before, or my test says something differently. So.
Well, certainly, you know, it's an important issue and something that we support here at Huffpost Live and at the Huffington Post. So we're happy to help get the message out there.
Thank you.
You know, get more people involved. And you know, one of the things, Mark, last time that you were here is what we discussed in your other role as an actor.
Yeah,
you know,
as
your day job, whether or not you feel any type of responsibility to pick certain roles or certain topics and subjects that you think also spread a certain message or a political message. And so your next project with HBO certainly does that. I want to play a clip. You star in HBO's film adaptation of Larry Kramer's Tony-winning play, The Normal Heart. So let's take a look.
Men do not naturally not love. They learn not to.
Ned Weeks, I spoke to you after the Times article.
I've seen over 300 patients. Where's this big mouth I hear you've got?
Big mouth a symptom?
No, it's a cure. You are all going to infect each other.
Let us speak! He doesn't leave much to look forward to.
You're accusing the government of a conspiracy to murder all gay men?
Yes.
So what drew you to that role?
I love people, and I have a lot of compassion for the struggle of people, and I saw, you know, I was growing up during the AIDS epidemic, and I saw how cruel and how insensitive people were, to these people suffering. And it sort of has been forgotten in our culture what happened during those times, and the people who were important during those times, and this small group of people who really instituted a vast change and brought us to the point today where we're even, you know, gay marriage is like as common as almost as marriage right now. And that was an important story that needed to be told. And I was honored to tell it with the folks that I got to tell it with, and having Larry Kramer's words to convey it. And sometimes you're lucky as an actor. Sometimes you get a part that you can, you know, tap into your own beliefs or your own passion or your own sensibilities. And that was one of them.
Well, I'm certainly looking forward to watching it. You and your co-stars, I got made fun of by the producers today because I was just, you know, looking at who else was in it, and then I got caught with just having an entire Google image search on my computer of Taylor Kitsch, of your co-star there.
Yeah.
Hopefully he'll come and join us and talk about it as well.
Guy.
All right, gentlemen, I have to leave it there,
Hey,
but Mark and Scott and Brian, if you're
Thank
still
you.
there with us, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
And thank you, John Pratt, our executive director. Thank you for all the hard work you do.
And for more information about waterdefense.org, you can just check out all the information that's in our resource well. Stick around. There's much more coming up on Huffpost Live.